So this is your SoWeLa July 20th Autocross course recap. We're going to try to do these pretty consistently from now on, where we either take a video or possibly some still photos of the course itself, and then get a driver, in this case me, to talk through it with John and talk about what the course was like and what we did and why we did it. And it may be that it'll be interesting to get some input, because I'm driving rear-wheel drive and he's driving front-wheel drive.
Right.
We'll talk about different lines and why.
And we're also driving different levels of preparedness.
Yeah.
Between our vehicles.
I'm starting to think my car's kind of quick.
Yeah, just a little bit. So we'll go ahead and get the video rolling, and we're gonna just run through a first play of the lap, and just get a quick overview, and then we're gonna go back and we're gonna pause it. Whatever corners we want to try and discuss.
Talk about lines and stuff.
Right.
The quality of the video that you're seeing may not be anywhere nearly as good as I got on my camera.
Right, and we'll be sure to post the raw footage.
Yeah, that's good.
Of this lap for you guys to be able to go back and look at. Basically, what happens is the capturing software that we're using, we're still trying to figure out. But overall,
one of the things we're not as interested in the video because we're going to be doing still frames anyway.
Right.
But one of the things I wanted to be able to do was to tell when I was getting on the gas, because that's one of the keys to going fast is concentrating really hard on how early you can get on the gas and how late you can stay on it.
Right.
I was comparing my videos to Ben's, and there were several places where just for a split second I was on the gas that he was just coasting, and that adds up.
Oh, absolutely.
So that was a 44.1 second run.
And that was your fastest for the day?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my second heat, some things went wrong.
That was the one that you attacked some cones? Okay, so we're going to go back and start the video over, and as we go into each turn, we'll try and pause it and discuss different aspects of everything.
Ready?
All right, so going into this first sweeper, if you could pause about there. Going into the first sweeper, I knew, my car accelerates pretty good, but at the same time, for that first section, I'm not going to be going really fast because I'm still accelerating, and so I tried to stay really tight. And by staying tight, I mean I'm staying close to the inside of the turn, close to the optimum line. I'm not going wide, trying to set up anything. I just, shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, so I'm trying to get as close to that as I can, and close to the inside.
Now, but on this one, I know that, I don't know if you did, I know I did it. I came pretty close to hitting one of the cones at the starting, and that's because I was trying to get to the right side of the entrance, and that's because you not only had that one inside cone, but you also had a second one right here. And what made it really funky is that you normally, in a lot of turns, you can just swing out in this area right here, but in this case, that wasn't possible because you had this one extra cone there, so you had to really cut it in tight.
That was for me. There were several places on this course that didn't drive the way they walked, and this was one of them. I expected to do what you're talking about, swing out to the right to set up for the next section. But as it turned out, I wasn't going fast enough for that to matter, so I just stuck tight.
So when
you watch, when I get up there, I just
we'll advance a little bit. And
I ignored the first cone and tried to get as close to the second cone as I could.
Right. Okay. So you can see that coming in.
Yep. See, I'm just getting in tight there.
Okay.
I'm going slow anyway.
Absolutely.
And then same here. You can't get a whole lot of speed here, so you just take it as tight as you can. And you remember a couple of days ago, maybe a week ago, I posted some hints from Kerry.
Yeah.
And he said drive the tight line as fast as possible.
Right.
When my car is going slow, that's absolutely perfect advice for me. I just try to stay as tight as I can, take the shortest distance through the course and go as fast as I can. There's a couple places on this course where getting the car sliding a little bit and using some of the horsepower was a big deal. But for lower horsepower front-wheel drive cars, that's absolutely good advice. And when my car's going slow, it's perfect for my car too.
Okay.
So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going driving.
You're keeping it slow.
Driving the tight line as fast as possible because I can't get going really fast.
You just haven't had the room to pick up speed.
Right.
Okay. So we're coming into the first bend.
Yeah, there's a big sweeper here. And something, I went out and stood on the course and watched this one, and there were two things to consider here. One is if you had a lot of horsepower, it might make sense to go a little bit wider to get set up for that straight stretch.
That way, by the time that you're basically right in here,
you're already pointing down the straight stretch.
You've already kicked your rear end to point the other way, and that way you can pretty much hammer on it and shoot out of that turn.
If you had a car that would do that few extra feet of distance might pay off. For me, again, that was the way I walked it. I figured I would swing out there and shoot out early. I'm sorry, get on the gas early and shoot out to the top of the corner and get straightened out. But when I actually drove it, it didn't work that way. So I was going slow enough that I could get down deep in that corner. But I stood on the course and watched, and I think a lot of people were either making or losing time there, whatever line they took in terms of when they were able to get on the gas. And in this run, I didn't get on the gas as early as I did in some of my later runs. But I compared my runs to my son Ben's, and I was still getting on the gas sooner. So the sooner you got on the gas in that corner, the more speed you built in the straightaway.
Okay. And I think...
Well, it wasn't really a straightaway.
I think with my Versa, if I remember correctly, I was still trying to pop out to the left a bit.
Yeah, because you were...
So that...
Yep, because you were starting to push otherwise. When you start getting on the gas, you start pushing because you got an open diff front-wheel drive.
Exactly. Yep. And I don't have nearly as grippy of tires. So
I think that's something people need to think about is that, there's a big difference in certain turns between the front-wheel drive and the rear-wheel drive line.
Absolutely.
You kind of count. You come in a little later than me. You turn a little later. You straighten out, and then you get on the gas. Where I've got rear-wheel drive and LSD, I can turn in a little earlier, hit the gas, kick the rear end out as the power comes in, and you'll see me do that a couple of times.
Right, and well, with the front wheel drive
that I have, you want to pull through the corner.
Yeah, I pull through the corner, but the thing is that once I pretty much get about half a rotation on that steering wheel, I lose most of the traction on those front wheels, and especially if I'm giving any gas. And I know that as I'm coming out, if I snap the wheel back to center, I will regain pretty much all my traction. And so it's kind of like
the classic over-the-limit front-wheel drive technique.
Yeah, and so it's kind of akin. Well, and I have to work with the tires that I got. And so what it does is it keeps me from getting the car bogged down coming out of the corner, and because I can't carry enough momentum through with my vehicle. But what I can do is I can kind of cheat it, and I can pick up momentum on my wheels. Yeah. And it's kind of like how if you do...
And then all of a sudden it catches and pulls.
Exactly. Kind of like if you do a clutch drop, if you drop the clutch and
you kind of... Like a clutch kick, like a drift clutch kick?
Yeah, and you launch the vehicle on a launch.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, when you do a launch, you don't just keep the RPMs low. You crank them up a bit, and you let those wheels get you going. And that's kind of what I'm doing. And maybe if we can, we'll pull up one of my videos so you can kind of see, and you can probably hear the tires doing that. But that's usually what I do on the front wheel drive when I don't have the limited slip on there. So you can see him coming out of the corner, and he keeps it real tight. And you kind of kicked out the rear end a little bit on that, or did you push?
No, the rear end was loose, but it wasn't as loose as it looks in the video. It was very catchable. It was just power on. That car's got a good limited slip, so I knew. From experience that with a lot of times, although anybody who was watching me later in the day knows this has got its limits, a lot of times when the back end comes out, if you get on the power, it'll actually bring the back end back. Because if you've got the back end out, you're sliding on one tire. Okay. And if you feed the power in, it catches both tires.
It kind of just digs the back end for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's an E36 characteristic that's wonderful if you get it right. So that's what's going on.
I guess that's kind of akin to with... I mean, we're in Louisiana, so people might actually understand this, and we do have people that have them, is when you have a truck and you lose traction off-road, you don't want to slam on the brakes or something because that will keep the tires
sliding.
Yeah, and so you don't want to be cranking on the gas, but you always want to be giving it gas because that torque on the drivetrain will help keep the vehicle dug in better.
Yeah, essentially that's what you're looking at. Giving it some power gets the other tire back in the action.
And this is the set of boxes that we had.
Yeah, it's just like a chicane almost.
Right.
And I was hammering it through there. I pretty much had it flat out, except you'll hear if the video works right, when I get up to that little chicane, I actually chopped the throttle a little bit to throw the rear end out to the right, and then got back on it to steady it.
Okay. I'll go ahead and
you might be able to hear
try and bring up the audio on that a bit. One of the things that I want to try and point out is that this box was, I mean, you see all kinds of different setups and stuff, but this box I kind of felt like it could have been tighter or they could have been more offset to really get the effect of having them there.
It was almost more of a chicane than a box.
Exactly. So it really, and that's the thing that you have to, that goes on to driving a course and walking a course and seeing those differences, or you look at the course map and you say, oh, I see these boxes, I'm going to have to do it this way, and you see the suggestions line as well, and you end up just doing a completely different line.
I mean, I've said that a couple times already, and I said it to Bill too. This course drove different than it walked.
Way different.
Yeah, there were a couple places where I expected to do something when I was walking it, but when I got there in the car, I was going way slower or way faster, so I had to modify it on the fly.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and progress through the boxes, maybe pause halfway through it to try and just see what we're talking about. So you come in and you switch back over.
So you hear my throttle there. When the tires started to squeal, that was because I backed out of the throttle hard to toss the rear end over. You know, I was rotating the car more with my foot than with my steering hands. So I backed out of it. I was already rocked a little bit with the steering, backed out of it just a second to throw it to the right, and then got back on the gas because I was pointing the right direction.
Okay. Now coming into this.
Coming into that is actually someplace where I was making time compared to some of the cars that I listened to, because they'd get through the chicane or the box or whatever it was, and then they'd coast up to the turn.
Really?
And I was on the throttle again, even if it was for only 0.3 of a second.
Yeah, I think that's something that people don't. You know, I talked to some people. I mean, I'm not, by no means am I an expert on this.
Yeah, but in some ways that helps because you're paying a lot of attention. I'm just doing it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that I don't necessarily know everything super well, but I can observe very well, and that's what helps me a lot, and that's what allows me to get better at things.
You don't have as many preconceptions as me.
Right. You know, that too. And one of the things that people, you know, like, you've seen me drive, is there anything that you might be able to suggest? And
use the gas pedal more.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is all I can really say is, like, I don't know enough to tell you, but what I can tell you is you need to go faster.
Yeah, people.
And that sounds really simple.
People think I'm being sarcastic when I say that. It's like, yeah, do exactly what you did, just do it a lot faster. But that's actually solid advice.
And here's the thing, is that you're doing a lap that's less than a minute.
Right.
These were 40, 50, 60-second laps.
0.1 of a second counts.
Yeah, if you have 10 feet where you can hit the gas, do it.
Well, if you get bored, sometimes sit down and do the math. If you go, I mean, see, there's 100 feet there,
right?
And you spend that 100 feet at 32 miles an hour instead of 30 miles an hour, you might pick up 0.3 of a second,
right?
And you know, you do that 4 or 5 different places in the course, and you're just like, well, okay, so you're on the gas 0.3 of a second longer than me. Well, guess what? I just picked up 400 feet on you.
Yep.
You know, so I get to, and if it's 400 feet at 40 miles an hour is X amount of seconds, guess what? I get to the finish line that much sooner than you because of that,
and because you gain
little tiny bit.
Tenths of a second.
Yep.
I mean, go look at any of the race results that we've had, and you'll see plenty of people who got beat out by somebody else by tenths of a second.
And it's a hard thing to learn. Josh and I were talking about this last night, because you don't get much seat time in an autocross. You've got so much more seat time driving around in your car. Your habits are driving around habits, not autocrossing habits. So if you're between a stop sign and a corner, you don't stay on the gas all the way to the corner and then brake real hard for that corner, and then get on the gas hard after the corner when you're driving down the road, because you know you get in all kind of trouble for that. But that's what you need to be doing in an autocross. If you're not, and I told Ro this too, I said, if you're not steering or braking, you're on the gas.
Right.
Whether you're on the gas all the way, I mean, if you're driving a 700 horsepower Corvette, you don't want to have it floored. You know, Jared's car, you're not going to floor it all the time. Even my car, you're not going to floor it all the time. But you want to be feeding it some throttle, as much throttle as it'll take. And then as you put some other traction demand on it, you start rotating the steering in or you start hitting the brake, that's when you come off the throttle. You want to be right at the limits of your traction all the time, whether it's with steering, with braking, or with gas, or a combination of the three. And if you're not using steering or braking, you need to be using gas.
Right. All right, so we'll go ahead and progress.
So you'll hear me come off the throttle on the brakes just as fast as I can go here. See, there's a little punch of the throttle there, just because there was.
But that was for a reason, and it went by really fast. I'm going to back it off because there's something that is really, I think, is very important coming into this turn, which people might not realize, might not have recognized, and you can start to see it right here. That cone.
That cone was a pain in the butt.
Turn this from one big turn into
basically a little tiny short straight with a turn after it.
Exactly, because the thing is that there's two ways that you could have really entered this turn coming up, and that was to just stay out here and use what this cone lets you get, or you could bump your car out right after it.
Yep.
And give yourself some more room.
Yeah, I carried so much speed in there that I actually went out past that cone and came back, which set me up for a real slow turn into that button hook.
Right. Yeah, and that the corner coming up is very, very tight.
Yep.
And so that's why I don't really know. It didn't look like you did it.
Well, my thinking on that one, no, I didn't bump out past that cone. I bumped out before that cone.
We'll progress a little bit just to go into the next one.
My thinking here.
So you kicked back to the left a little bit.
Yeah. My thinking here was, I got to slow way down for that button hook anyway, for that hairpin.
Yep.
So I might as well start going tight. So I didn't take I didn't take a lot of the room out to the left. Okay. And when I walked it, I thought I was going to, but when I got there driving it, it came out different. So
yeah, every time I did it, I would swing out my left tires past this line.
But see, again, that's front wheel drive versus rear wheel drive.
Exactly.
You're trying to get your turning done early so you can get back on the gas and go straight, where I knew the LSD was going to carry me through it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So coming into that,
see, I got wide. I got wide, and then I'm really down tight on the inside.
Right.
I took that much tighter than I had expected to when I was walking it, because when I got in the car, I realized I got to slow down a lot for this. So I'm going so slow I can take it way down to the inside and cut it shorter.
Absolutely. I know that on this one, for me, I have a really short first gear, and usually I stay in second for most events. But this is one of those few instances where I did have to pop down to the first.
Yeah, see, my car's got
and
a lot of torque.
And if we go to my video, if we do that one, you'll really be able to see how we were talking about those tenths of a second will make a difference, because coming out of here, I think to that cone, that's the distance that I was in first.
Gotcha. Yeah,
but it made that difference.
Yep. I remember riding with you. That was about where you shifted.
You're coming in.
Here we are again. This is a tight left, and it's set up with a short, kind of a short little jog, and then another tight left. But even so, after I get past this cone, I got a split second where I can get on the gas. Yeah,
and this is another. I think this is the other. You had the button hook.
Yeah.
Just before, and then you came into this set of turns, and those were the two.
They were hard. Yeah.
They were hard.
There were a lot of people. Again, there's a couple of things about course design and about course walking that either somebody teaches you or you learn after a long time, and that is that courses always break down to elements. And there's some elements that are going to be the same from course to course, even if the course is different.
Right.
Like a chicane or a sweeper or a turnaround or something. And and the other thing that you notice is that there's going to be certain places that are a lot more important than others. This is one of them. There are a lot of people either making time or losing time here.
Exactly, because there's just so much to it that
it's a lot of motion.
Yeah, if you don't get set up straight here, you lose speed going into the next turn, and then that goofs up that, and it snowballs. This is one of those spots that is just going to snowball either good or bad.
For future versions of this thing where we're recapping the course, we might want to get some inside the car video of some of our fast people. Again, I keep pointing to Jared or maybe Tim Dingle.
Of them doing controlling the vehicle?
Where you see their hands. Yeah. Yeah, because I was busy as heck right here. I was just flailing.
I was as well, and that's something that I've thought about it as well, because I can guarantee that I probably have a much different. I'd be willing to say that my hand control is a lot more loose than others would. Especially after we started doing that harness stuff, and we'll have to talk about that as well.
With a slippy front wheel drive car, you got to do a lot of steering.
Yeah, absolutely. And I throw the wheel. I take my hands off the wheel a lot more than what a lot of people.
To do that.
Yeah, exactly. See, exactly. You say that, but if you really.
But in this section, I was doing the same thing because I knew where my car would come back to. So I just took my hands off.
You have to know your vehicle. You have to know that if I throw my wheel, and I grab it at this spot, that's where it's going to be. And it is risky, but in an autocross
as an instructor, I can't conscientiously recommend that to anybody. But
don't.
I do it.
Yeah, that's the thing. You just have to really know your vehicle and
don't do it in
a
shifter cart, though. I can tell you, don't do it in a shifter cart.
Right. So you swing around, you got to come back over.
Yep.
And that's just such a tight turn with that inside cone. He really brought it in. And
I got lucky, more or less, on this one. And was able. You see, when I came out, I was right on the line.
You want to back it up a little bit?
That's okay.
Okay.
I'm over to the right, and I'm aiming. I'm not even looking at these cones over here. That's something else that we need to talk about. Is where do you look? You look as far ahead as you can. Again, those tips from Kerry. He said try to look at least 1 or 2 elements.
Right.
He said elements.
Yeah, and
look
that
1 or 2 elements ahead of the
and
course.
Jared reiterated
Yep.
that too on the podcast that
Yep.
just came out for the interview that I did with him. That's the. I mean, if that's a recurring theme that you're going to constantly be hearing is.
Yeah, and it takes practice.
Yeah, and really, I don't know how the driver ed system is here because I went through driver's ed in Illinois, but the thing that they taught is how you have to scan your sectors.
Yeah.
And you learned how to drive in New York,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it may be different there as well. But the idea is that you check, and to many of you this might be old news, but maybe there's 1 or 2 people out there who don't know this, and it'll help them out. And so that's why I always like to try and back off and before we get too in depth, because there's always new people.
Sure.
And the idea is that you want to always you want to look at your different sectors. So that might be 20 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet. Depends on what you're driving. If I'm driving on the interstate, I'm going to be looking 20 feet out, 50 feet out, 100 or 150 feet out.
For autocross, if you're going to be really unusual to get up into the 50-mile-an-hour range. So you can look maybe not as far ahead as you would.
And the idea behind that is that you look further out in relation to your speed due to your reaction timing.
And your car's going to go where you look too.
Yeah, and how long it takes for any kind of effects for any input on your vehicle, how long it actually takes for something to come out of it, that delay increases with your speed. So even in autocross, especially like slaloms, I think it was a video that you recently recommended me to look at, or maybe it was the link from Kerry talking about how when you go into a chicane, you basically, once you go from one side of the chicane, you mentally want to be steering back into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's a delay of your body.
Well, there's your body and your slip angle coming back through, and there's a bunch of stuff coming.
And a way to cheat that, basically, to cheat your body into doing things quicker, is you need to focus not on what's happening now, but what's happening in the future. Because your body will follow your eyes. Just like any other sport, you play baseball and they say, hey,
keep your eye on the ball.
Play golf, eye on the ball.
Keep your eye on where you want the car to be in a few seconds.
Yeah, and it's going to go there. It's going to make, if you don't do that, do it, and you're going to notice a huge difference.
Well, and there's places you can practice that too. I wouldn't have thought that going to like Kart Ranch or NMSP, NOLA Motorsports Parks, rental carts. Those are not really race cars. They're pretty good at NOLA. They're not so great at the Kart Ranch. But even goofy little carts like that, I mean, practically even mowing your own lawn, you can practice looking ahead and notice that the vehicle goes where you're looking. When we did that kart enduro a couple of weeks ago, I was practicing looking ahead. And if I looked 2 or 3 corners ahead, I just felt how much smoother I was through those sections.
Right.
And
I mean,
and I had time to do it because I could do it 3 or 4 laps.
For anybody that's done any kind of marching band stuff, even.
Yeah.
If you ever wondered how does a group of 100, 200 people all stay aligned and march in a straight line, it's because they're not looking at the guy's head in front of them. They're looking past his head, 100 yards ahead, because that just draws your body into that straight line.
And looking for those opportunities to practice these things other than on an autocross course, which you go to for 4 minutes every month.
Right. Yeah, there's so many things out there that you can do outside of this, and that's probably something that we could probably cover on one of our podcasts.
When we start running out of topics.
Yeah. So we'll go into that. So you have to swing. You swung into that first turn. You're coming back around, and now you have to go into this larger one. So you
brakes.
You didn't really try to swing wide too much on that, and I guess that goes back to you having that rear wheel drive.
Well, it goes back to that, and again, this was where the course drove different than it walked. I just didn't have enough speed to make it worth it. I mean, I wasn't trying to carry extra speed through here.
So might as well just squeeze in.
Stay tight. Yep.
Okay, that makes sense.
So I'm coming really close to the inside. I mean, and you're always going to come close to some part of the turn because that's the apex. But in some cases, it means just picking a cone and staying right tight to that cone, which I did here. Because I'm going slow anyway.
Yeah, and you kind of, looking at those, you kind of swung out a bit. And it's the thing you have to realize is, as you were just talking about with the apex, a lot of people will probably look at, like on the previous one, you had more than one cone detailing that inside line. On this coming up turn, you only have that one cone telling you where the inside of the turn is.
Sure.
And what a lot of people will probably try to do sometimes is try and hug all those cones. But the thing you have to realize
is the right way to go.
Right, just as we were talking about before, you always want to be looking ahead. You can see that Doug didn't hug those cones. I'll back it up just a little bit and try and pause on there okay, so you can see him right here, and he's not right on top of him. And that's because that next turn.
Yeah, that's a really good point that I haven't thought about in a long time because I haven't taught anybody from scratch in a while. But when I first started teaching Ben to drive karts, we talked a lot about driving the course versus driving the line. And it took him a while to figure out what I meant because he was quick right from the word go when he was a little kid. But he was following he was literally following the flower lines. And
he wouldn't deviate.
Right. And so I got watching videos, and I'm like, you're driving the course, not the line. And he's like, well, what does that mean, Dad? There's lines out there, and I'm driving on them.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So then we had to have a discussion about what a racing line is.
Yeah.
And what a racing line is, to simplify it a lot, is it's the line that goes around the track while spending the least amount of time doing that, right?
Yeah, it's the actual shortest distance.
Yeah,
and I don't have
the shortest distance
a
around the
tool
track. No, we can't do that.
To make a line.
But
basically, I can kind of do it here, is if I looked at just this section, what I wouldn't want to do is I wouldn't want to come and turn, follow around, and come back around. What you want to do is you're so far out in this turn, however far you are, and basically you want the straightest distance to that inside, to that other inside point. And overall, what's going to end up happening is that you're literally covering less distance.
Less distance means less time.
So we'll go ahead and progress a little bit further. Oop, wrong button. Okay.
There you go.
And you can see you kind of whipped it around a bit, but that's to get set up on the next one because it's a lot sharper.
And
so
just like you're talking about, you got to deal with what your car is going to do.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the ideal line, there's a bad line, there's a good line, and then there's the line you end up on because your car goes
right. And really, I mean, that example I provided, that was not including the fact that there's this extra turn coming up. That, I guess that was kind of a bad example, but that just kind of goes in. I guess that's further proof of, guess what, you got to be looking ahead even further. I just can't do that on the video. So going a little bit further, swinging around pretty hard on that one. But I'm guessing that really pushed it in on that inside of that turn, huh?
Well, I was trying to get down low in that turn because the next one was a right, so I wanted to be over to the left.
Okay. And do you push out on this one as you're coming into it?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so. That was rear end slide.
Right.
Now here, this is the big turn at the end, I think.
Yeah, it is.
And what I realized with that one, that was the best example on that course of driving different than it walked. Because when I looked at it, walking it, I thought it was going to be a big, wide sweeper.
Yeah, I did
but
too.
I gave up so much speed in the 2 turns before that.
And then trying to, there's just not enough speed to do
so
that.
I gave up enough speed coming into it that I took the front part of it, the first part of it real tight, and then just got what I could out of the second part. And you guys saw later in the day when I tried to carry a lot of speed into that turn, I just couldn't get it back.
Yeah.
And I blew the second half. I blew out the second half of the turn.
What was that? That was the one where you took out the cones?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't catch that. I just saw the video.
My best runs, I was going slow through this section and just keeping it tight and then getting back on the gas as soon as I could.
Yeah. And when you rode along with me, this is the one I came into it just a little too high.
Yeah, and you pushed out the other side.
Yeah. And you actually were able to keep it in.
Yep.
Pretty tight.
Yeah, and it's because I realized you can only go so fast through here, so you might as well just go efficient.
Right. And that's probably, as you were saying, that was my bad spot that I had, and I really just tried pushing it, and I saw a lot of people doing it, and they were pushing out into this area.
And it wasn't as bad yesterday, but the last course, the one Jared designed, had a cut back to the right after this. It was basically the same turn, except he had a cut back to the right before the finish. And if you got out there to the left, you lost a ton of time trying to get back to that right. And the same here. If you get out to the left, you lose time trying to recover your car in time to point it at the finish. And you'll see here, I come through this turn, and when I get done with the turn, I'm pointed at the finish line and on the gas.
Yeah. So we'll go carry it through a little bit more.
See, just nail the gas and off we go.
And right there, the thing that I don't think everybody realizes is that you are pushing it all the way through that finish line.
Yeah, yeah. Don't want to lose that 10th second.
Exactly. Don't hammer on that gas until you're past that finish line, then do your braking. And be sure to slow down good enough, to be going back to the grid or the paddock.
Because some idiot like me might cut through the runoff lane later.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, you just don't know what's coming up.
But yeah, stay on the gas until the finish, and a half a beat, a half of a one count past the finish.
Right.
Then hit your brakes.
Yeah. Don't actually intend to brake until well after that finish line. Then get on the brake as much as you want, but just that's one thing I think that not everybody remembers to do.
You just don't want to be coasting on an autocross course. There's no place for coasting.
There isn't. There's just you can't make up for it. That's pretty much.
That's it.
Yeah, the video, the lap right there. Don't really need to go back into it. Okay.
I think that's all I have to say about that course.
Okay.